She said it so casually, I almost missed it. A whisper disguised as a joke. A blade disguised as breath. "Stop introducing me as your wife," she murmured, sliding her fingers off my arm at the law firm gala. "It makes me look like I settled." Settled. The word hit harder than any courtroom verdict I'd ever delivered. Colder, too. Sharper. I didn't respond. Not then. I simply felt something inside me shift, quietly, like a lock turning in an empty house. The next morning, she didn't notice when I watched her leave for spin class with makeup too polished for a bike in a dark room. She didn't notice when she said, "Don't wait up," a little too softly. She didn't notice the way her phone lit up on the counter with a name I didn't recognize, but I memorized it without blinking. And that night, when she came home flushed and glowing, she didn't notice how still I sat in the kitchen, the untouched glass of water sweating between my hands. She only noticed herself, her reflection, her curated life, not me. And as she walked past me, humming to herself, I felt the truth forming around me. Not spoken, not proven, but real enough to taste. Something was wrong. Very wrong. A marriage doesn't rot overnight. It rots slowly, quietly, beneath the wallpaper of routine. And I knew, before any evidence, before any report, that I'd been living beside a stranger who believed she deserved better than me. Good to know. Very good to know. Because the moment she said those words, something ancient inside me opened its eyes, and it did not plan to close them again. The first real crack appeared 2 days later. She came home smelling like a cologne I didn't wear. Subtle, expensive, the kind chosen by men who cared too much about being noticed. Her smile was too wide, her steps too light. She tossed her bag on the couch, humming again, the same melody she always used when she'd rehearsed a lie on the drive home. I asked how her day was. She answered too quickly. "Fine, normal, busy. Fine, normal, busy." Lies often hide inside the most ordinary words. When she turned away, I noticed a faint smear of bronzer on her collar, too warm in tone to be hers. A mistake, a fingerprint of someone else's face on fabric I had paid for. I felt it then, the silent shattering, the denial snapping into fear, fear straightening into certainty. But I didn't speak. I just watched her throw her arms around me with affection that felt choreographed, watched her overcompensate, the sudden attentiveness, the forced laughter, and beneath every gesture, the betrayal humming like electricity in the walls. I didn't know the details yet, not the name, not the dates, not the timeline, but I knew the pattern. I'd seen it across the negotiation tables of broken marriages. I'd witnessed it in clients who smiled while hiding knives behind their promises. My wife had joined them. And the most terrifying part? She thought I was too enamored, too trusting, too stable to notice. She mistook my silence for ignorance. She didn't realize it was the sound of calculation. The next week became a study and observation. I moved through our home like a ghost she couldn't see, documenting details she didn't know she was revealing. Phone calls taken in the pantry, showers at strange hours, sudden interest in her appearance, her phone, her privacy. I checked our shared accounts. Her spending had changed. Afternoon charges at cafes she never mentioned, hotel bars far from her office, ride shares traced across parts of the city she hated. I requested financial statements from every loan and mortgage she'd looped me into, documents she insisted we share when we married, saying partnership meant transparency. Ironic. I quietly removed my name. Every account, every property, every liability she had tethered to my credit like anchors disguised as dreams. She didn't notice. She was too busy. And when she left her laptop open one night while she showered, I finally saw it. The message thread with the man whose cologne she wore home. The plans, the meetings, the way she spoke about me, not with anger or frustration, but with boredom, as if I were a placeholder she intended to move past. Wife who settled? No. A woman climbing, using me as a rung. The rage rose fast, but I held it down with a hand steady from years of courtroom discipline. I would not scream. I would not accuse. I would build a case, a plan, a reckoning. 2 weeks later, I had everything: the private investigator's report, the photos, the timestamps, the financial trail leading from her life to someone else's bed. I waited for her in the dining room, the envelope resting on the table like an unspoken sentence. She walked in, saw me sitting there, and froze. "What's wrong?" she asked, voice trembling under the surface. I slid the envelope toward her, said nothing. She opened it, her face drained, her jaw shook. I saw the moment her world collapsed, not because she loved me, but because she finally understood the cost of being caught. "I can explain." "Don't." One word, quiet, final. She looked at me like I'd become someone she couldn't predict. Maybe I had. Or maybe this was who I had always been. She'd just never imagined I might use that part of myself against her. 2 days later, she attended a brunch with her friends, women who adored the performance of her life almost as much as she did. I wasn't invited, naturally, but I didn't need to be, because when she arrived, a folder was waiting at her seat, my firm's logo stamped across the front. Inside, documents she had never expected to see. The dissolution of financial ties she depended on, my withdrawal as co-signer on every loan, every mortgage, every investment she'd stretched herself thin to maintain. Her friends watched her read, watched her breathing falter, watched the color leave her face. She looked around for me, stunned, as if I had materialized the consequences out of thin air. But I was nowhere near her. I didn't need to be. Revenge is cleaner when delivered in silence. That night, she came home shaking, asking why, begging for conversation, searching for the man she thought she could manipulate forever. But I was done performing. I simply said, "You didn't want to be introduced as my wife, so I made sure you wouldn't have to be." Her breath stuttered. She stared at me like I'd shattered her entire reflection. Maybe I had. I felt nothing. No pity, no anger, no grief, just clarity. She mistook me for a foundation, but I am not something people stand on. I am something they fall from, and she finally learned the distance.